those were all made out of wood. So you know what happens to wood in Florida. If you didn't get taken out by termites or hurricanes or fire, then a cannonball will definitely ruin a wooden fort. So the beauty of coquina, obviously it stands up against hurricanes. You don't have to worry about fire or termites or anything like that. And a cannonball just sinks into the wall or falls to the ground without doing any damage. At night, the soldiers would sneak out, gather up all the cannonballs, put them back in their cannons, and fire them at the enemy ship the next day. So the majority of ships that were sunk out there were actually sunk by their own cannons. There was even some rumor that they would occasionally write notes on the cannons. It's kind of taunting me. Another thing a lot of people don't necessarily know is that this is actually a castle. It's got a moat and a drawbridge, so that makes it a castle. The moat was designed to be a dry moat. There was never supposed to be water in it. If they were under attack, sometimes they put their cattle in there to protect them, but otherwise there just wasn't supposed to be anything in there. Well, the British come along and all their moats have water, so they figured there's supposed to be water. They let the seawater in, and after a couple of years, it started to crack the foundation of the fort. Well, you can kind of see some of the cracks along the wall there, but when we get to the other side of that turret, there's a really big crack there. That's all from when they let the seawater in. Now, the fort has never been captured in battle, never been defeated. It would change hands when the territories changed hands, but it's never been taken by force. In 1702, the governor of the Carolinas, James Moore, thought he was going to capture the fort in the name of Britain. He came along, spent 2 months out there, firing cannonballs at it, attacking it in different ways. He even called in reinforcements, but he was not successful. So when he left, he burned the rest of the city down. Back then, the King of Spain told all his citizens, because they were still under the rule of the King of Spain, told all the citizens that you couldn't use coquina or stone to build any of your structures until the fort was complete. And it actually took 23 years to finish the fort. Coquina just dries really slow. So at that time, everything else was made out of wood. Luckily, the Spanish caught wind of what was going on, and they were able to get most of the citizens safely behind the walls of the fort. But otherwise, everything burned. So that's why you don't, even though the city's been here since 1565, you don't really see anything that predates 1702, other than the fort, and then there's one other thing we'll see further on down.
That's when they have that restored.
Yeah, there's the big crack right there.
JJ's enjoying this.
After James Moore left, they decided to build a wall around the city. The wall that we're coming up to, well, that looks like a fence to me. It doesn't look like a wall. But that is just a reproduction. The original wall was 9 feet tall, and it circled the entire city. Now, we're going to come up to the gates here in just a minute, and I'll tell you the rest when we get there. Luckily, it gets quieter once we move into the city. Now, these are the city gates. When they built the original wall in 1702, they built the gates out of wood, so I guess they didn't ever learn their lesson from the fort. But finally, somebody in 1808 decided to go ahead and build the gates out of coquina. So these are actually the original coquina gates. They were really strict with their curfew. They would close and lock the gates right around dusk. Nobody was allowed in or out until the next day. And if somebody tried to get in after they locked the gates, they would just shoot them. They figured if you lived in the city, you knew better. If you didn't live in the city and you were trying to get in after dark, you were probably up to no good anyway. Now, St. Augustine was a Catholic city. If you were not Catholic when you died, you weren't allowed to be buried in the city. They bury you out here in the Huguenot Cemetery.
You think so, grandson?
Is he telling some of the stories?
I think so.
Now, the cemetery has maybe 150 markers, but closer to 1,000 bones. In 1821, they had the yellow fever epidemic. So many people died, they started to run out of room in the cemeteries. Not just this one, but all over. They started having to bury whole families together in one grave. Normally, the last one to go into the grave is the one that got the marker. Well, obviously, not everybody dies on the same day, so they bury the first person. When the second person died, they'd have to dig up the first person, which is bad enough, but it gets worse. They would occasionally find evidence that the first person hadn't actually died. They didn't know what a coma was. So if somebody fell into a coma and was unresponsive, they just thought they were dead. To avoid doing that, they started tying a rope around the wrist of the deceased that led to a bell that hung over the grave. So if they were fighting to get out, it would ring the bell. They were literally saved by the bell. They would hire young boys to sit in the cemetery to listen for the bell. They were working the graveyard shift. Yeah, that's right. Now we're going to change gears here a little bit. We're coming up on the love tree. It's this oak tree that's kind of lit up right here. They say if you kiss under its branches, your love will last forever. It's a palm tree growing out of the center of an oak tree. So take a look when we go by. We are going to pass under its branches, by the way. You're just smiling like crazy, aren't you? You having a good time?
Say yes, ma'am.
Yes. Oh. So that's a palm tree and that's an oak tree. Now I'll explain that a little better in a while. But now we're at the Talamado Cemetery. This was established by a group called the Menorcans. They believed you should not bury your dead in the ground unless you're on your homeland. Their homeland was the Menorcan Islands off the coast of Spain. So their solution was to leave the bodies above ground in these above ground caskets. Hi guys! How are you?
Previous fans.
Nice.
Yeah.
So the idea was that they would take the dead bodies back to the Menorcan Islands to be buried properly. So sometimes they made it back and sometimes they didn't.
Yeah, the single headstone, is that the headstone of the boy?
That's James, yeah. So James, you guys want to hear the story of James? James was a little boy that was one of the boys they hired to sit in the cemetery to listen for the bell. He really liked his job. The oak tree that we passed that's right by his headstone had a branch that kind of came swooping down like this, and it made like a little arch. And he would sit in the arch there and listen for the bell. Well, one day he was playing around in the tree and he fell out and broke his neck. They allowed his mother to bury him there because he really loved working there. And they would say sometimes when you would go by, you could still see James sitting in the little arch of the tree. Well, about 5 years ago, the tree was struck by lightning and that arch came down. Well, they didn't see James for a long time. Within maybe the last year or two, I guess, they've started seeing him again in the cemetery. I have honestly had people show me pictures that they've taken in the graveyard where you can clearly see the outline of a little boy in the cemetery. I mean, obviously it's an apparition. It's not like a person standing there.
Yep.
But it really looks like the outline of a little boy, including like the little cap. You can see sometimes he's standing, sometimes he's sitting, different areas of the cemetery, but it's always clearly the outline of a little boy. So he's still there listening for the bell. Now, do you guys know, you know who Henry Flagler is. Do you guys know who Henry Flagler is? So, that is it, right? Oh. So he moved here because his wife Mary had tuberculosis, and this was supposed to be a better climate for her. Unfortunately, she only made it as far as Jacksonville, and she passed away. Flagler decided to come the rest of the way down, fell in love with the city, and he decided to stay. This is actually the first church that he built in this area, the Grace United Methodist Church. He wasn't Methodist. The reason he built this church is because the Methodist church was sitting on property he wanted for himself, so he offered to build the church here if he could have their property. Obviously, they said yes, which was a wise idea because this church is gorgeous. Now, every building Flagler built in the area has some Tiffany stained glass in it. This here is Tiffany stained glass.
I didn't notice that before.
Isn't that pretty?
This Tiffany glass, yeah.
Now, the bell tower is all one solid piece of hand-carved terracotta. It took 100 men and 40 oxen to pull that up into place. I actually had somebody on my ride a couple months ago that said, how did they get the oxen up there? Now, this house, this is the last house remaining standing that Flagler lived in. So back in the day before the Historic Society got a hold of this area, his houses were just, it's an old house, let's tear it down and build something new. Luckily, they got a hold of that one and they were able to save it. All the rest of it came back. Now it belongs to the college, which you can see in the background. These guys have been partying all day.
Hey, 1 horsepower.
That's right.
They're running.
I can never hear. I know he says 1 horsepower. He says
He
it
said
every
slow
time.
down, don't run
Oh.
so fast.
That's what he was saying. Every time I've gone by here now about 6 times, and he said the same thing every time. But this is all. This area over here is residential. This house is actually privately owned by somebody. But we're coming up on the Ancient City Baptist Church, which is the last church that Flagler built in the area. It's this yellow building ahead of us, built in 1895. It's not actually painted yellow. It's yellow bricks that Flagler imported from South America. That oval window there is Tiffany stained glass.
That's pretty.
Gorgeous. A little more ornate than the one back there.
I'm sorry, I'm a person that's drawn to Tiffany stuff. And
Well, you're in the right city for it.
yeah, I know. And what is it called? Carnival glass?
Yes, kind of.
Oh, I love that stuff.
I have a little tiny, oil lamp that is carnival glass. It's so pretty. Now, there's no bell in the bell tower because this is Flagler's church here, and he didn't want that bell to interrupt that house. This house here was built by Flagler as a thank you to his property manager. Like, thanks for taking care of my stuff. Here's a house. Now the house belongs to the church. There's a sad story to the church. So, we know he lost his wife Mary. They had a daughter named Jeannie Louise who still lived in Ohio, who still lived in Ohio, and she was pregnant. She wanted to come down here to live with her dad. On the way down, she had the baby, and then she passed away from complications of childbirth. And the baby Marjorie only lived 11 hours after that. So the church was actually built in their memory, and they're buried in here along with Henry and Mary. So at least all 4 together. There's an empty tomb in there that belonged to his son, but they were estranged, and his son married a woman in North Carolina. He moved up there, and he's buried up there with her. He wanted the church done within a year. They actually finished it in 364 days. However, now Flagler hired people to work 24/7 around the clock in shifts to get it done, and he offered them a really large bonus, everybody, a really large bonus if they completed it in time. Well, as I said, they finished the church in 364 days. However, the Tiffany stained glass was delayed. It was on a ship out in the ocean, and it didn't make it here in time. So since the glass wasn't in the windows, nobody got the bonus. There are rumors that Flagler himself is the one that told the ship to take a little extra. It actually took him like 3 or 4 extra days to get it. He could also be generous though, so you'll hear stories about him that make him sound like a monster sometimes, but you'll also hear stories about him that make him sound really generous. And kind of a little bit of both. Now, the college was built by Flagler as the Ponce de Leon Hotel. It was one of the most expensive hotels in the United States to stay in, and the first one to have electricity and hot and cold running water. Now, all the rich people like to hang out together. Thomas Edison himself installed the generators to run the electricity. But electricity was so new back then, his guests were afraid to turn on the light switches because they thought they'd get electrocuted. So Flagler hired local boys, and that's all they did all day was turn on and off light switches for people.
Called the switches.
Called the switches, exactly. This whole section here would have been the original hotel. All this was added later when it became a college. When Flagler died, it was inherited by his nephew, and his nephew was the one that turned it to a college in 1968. But before that, it was so expensive to stay here, they had a special sitting room for the women. They were supposed to go sit there while the men paid the bill, because it was believed if she saw how much money he was spending, she'd faint. The towers, we'll see another one again in a minute. The towers were water towers. They would hand pump the water to the top and let gravity disperse it throughout the hotel, so that's how they got their water towers. The chains, these are replicas of chains that used to sit in front of the fort at the bottom of the bay. If an enemy ship approached, they'd pull the chains up to sit a couple feet under the water. If the enemy ship crossed over the chains, then it would actually destroy the hull and sink the ship. If they stopped on the outside, that was the perfect distance for the cannons on the fort to fire and sink the ship that way. So either way, that ship was going to get sunk, probably using its own cannon. The palm trees, they used to play croquet from them. That's why they were planted. Yeah, those aren't balls. They look like balls. But nobody plays croquet anymore, so the students actually bring their hammocks out here. Oh, cool. Yeah. Ooh, look at that.
We're on King Street.
Corner of King and Isabella.
Now, are any of you guys fans of Harry Potter?
Yes.
So they do call the school Hogwarts because it does resemble Hogwarts a little bit. They actually have their own Quidditch team.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I thought somebody was pulling my leg when they told me that. But then I had a professor from the school ride with me and he confirmed it. Now this is called the Via Zoraida. This was built by a guy named Franklin Smith, who was a friend and business associate of Flagler's. It was the first concrete building built in St. Augustine. But look at the windows and doors as we go by. Notice how none of them are exactly the same.
Yeah.
The reason for that is they believed ghosts could get into your house through windows and doors, but if you made them all look different, it would confuse the ghost and they wouldn't be able to get in. Which apparently it worked for them, because if you go on any of our haunted tours, that's one of the few buildings in the city that's not haunted. It's also a really good museum if you haven't had a chance to visit it.
Kind of like the Winchester House in California.
Yeah, the Winchester House is even more elaborate. But same idea.
Yep.
Now the Leitner Museum, this is actually, he's enjoying it. The Leitner Museum was the property that Flagler wanted when he built that Methodist church. This was the Alcazar Hotel. It was supposed to be less expensive than the Ponce de Leon, but they considered it very risque because they had an indoor swimming pool where they let men and women swim together. That was just unheard of. They would, those rooms up in between the two towers on the top, you could rent by the hour, and they would continue to serve alcohol even during Prohibition because they figured they were so far away from everything nobody would care. And when Flagler died, it was purchased by Otto Leitner, who is a collector of collections. So he traveled the world buying up other people's collections, mostly antiques, and he displayed them all in his house. So this was actually his house. When he died, he gave it to St. Augustine as a gift, so now it's a museum and it's our city hall. In my opinion, it's the best museum in the city. There's everything in there from stained glass windows to taxidermy to jewelry and gemstones to musical instruments, inventions, fossils. I mean, there's so much stuff in there. It's amazing. And they've emptied the swimming pool. Now it's a cafe and restaurant. Best French onion soup I've ever had.
We
We're gonna
want
hop the curb, guys. Sorry.
that's on our bucket list.
Okay. Sorry about that.
You're good.
On your bucket
Look,
list.
baby.
Yep.
Look, baby. Look. Casa Monica's car.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Oh, that is cool.
Now, the Casa Monica was built by Franklin Smith, the same guy that built the Via Zoraida. But Flagler told him, don't open your hotel at the same time I open mine, and he didn't listen. Now, remember, Flagler owned the railroads. The railroads lost the furniture that was supposed to go to the hotel, so when they opened, they didn't do very well. They filed bankruptcy, and Flagler bought the building. But, well, so going to the cafe is on the bucket list, or just visiting the Leitner Museum?
Both.
Both. Oh, I highly recommend it.
I mean, where can
We've been coming down
actually
here 6 or 7 years and we still ain't put a dent in things.
Oh no, there is so much to
It
do.
is.
My husband and I have just recently started going to places like this. He's been working up here for 6 years. I just started. You were probably one of my first.
Probably.
one of my first.
Probably.
But we both work up here, and we still haven't done half the stuff here. We did the Lightner Museum before I worked.
I mean, who can honestly say that they eating food in a
in
swimming,
the swimming
pool?
pool, which that's the back entrance to it. We are still at the Lightner right now. Yeah, it's huge.
St. Augustine is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been coming for six years now, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, we even took a week down here and still haven't done a whole lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you'll just keep finding more stuff that you haven't done yet.
Especially the restaurants.
Yeah, yeah. We just ate at OC White's for the first time.
That's on our list. We haven't had that one yet.
Oh, definitely go.
We did the Irish pub last night because the River Fort
Yep.
had a 2-hour
Oh my
waiting
God.
list, so we just went down the block.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's Harry's. Will get a 3-hour wait.
Yeah,
yeah.
we go
We've
there
been
often
there
too.
too.
Luckily, yeah, I've been there before, but I don't care how good the food is. I'm not waiting for 2 hours or 3 hours to get in there.
Well, if you come down Nights of Lights, you're definitely going to be waiting unless you have
Oh, yeah.
a reservation.
Did you guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the first we came down and we made the mistake of coming down the night that they lit the
Oh
lights.
God. Oh, what a
The
madhouse.
tequila restaurant was like a
Woo.
3-hour wait.
Oh yeah. This is where I got my license to become a tour guide.
Really, I didn't know you had to have a license to do
We
it.
actually have to take a test.
So, how long does that take?
You mean to get the license?
Yeah, and the test.
I think it probably took me about a half an hour getting through all the questions. It's like,
Uh-huh.
it's like 5 or 6 pages. But it took me.
So you pretty much got to research all here and.
Well, they give you a study booklet, so you can kind of walk around and look at stuff and learn what everything is. But I was terrified because I'm not good with dates at all. I thought I'm never going to pass this. But I passed it on my first try, and then
Great.
now every day I learn something new. So I keep adding stuff.
That's like every time we come down, we learn something new.
I try and take a different route almost every trip because I don't want Rose to get bored.
Yeah.
And I can also bring people like you guys that have ridden with me before. I can take you a different route and maybe show you something different.
Do you go down Cordova Street or?
Yeah, well, we went down Cordova for a short while along where the bed and breakfast were.
Uh-huh.
Usually I don't go past the Methodist church, but sometimes I can go past the Methodist church and stay on.
Yeah, I love that part of town.
Now,
Favorite one is the Kenwood.
This right here, Hope. This is the Murat House. This is part of a group of houses called the Collector, which is a bed and breakfast. It was inhabited for a
That's the
short
one.
while by Prince Napoleon Achille Murat, who was Napoleon's nephew.
That's one of the bed and breakfasts we want to stay at, babe.
Yeah, I've heard only good stuff about them. Now, remember we talked about the fire in 1702? This wall is the only other thing that survived the fire. It was built in 1691. Inside is the Diocese of St. Augustine, a retirement home for the Sisters of St. Joseph. But the
So
oldest
that's where
building,
the old nuns live.
yeah. Yes, exactly. And they established the Catholic school right here.
Right.
Now we're coming up on the other love tree. So the love trees, it's a natural occurrence, a palm tree growing out of the center of an oak tree. In the Spanish language, they thought they were going to help the oak tree by cutting out the palm tree. Every time they did, you can see it, every time they did, the oak tree would die as well. So they actually can't live without each other. Once the Spanish figured that out, they decided to leave them alone and name them the love tree. There's still 7 of them here in the city.
Yep, one will die without the other, and if you kiss up under it, that means that if you can separate, you both will die.
My husband and I kissed under it 17 years ago. So far, so good.
We kissed under it, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Kenwood Inn. supposed to be the most haunted bed and breakfast.
It
in
is.
It is.
It's haunted.
We
We've
can
stayed
contest
in
to
three
it.
times.
So, have you actually had any like spiritual?
We've had the sheets pulled off. She's had
Oh
her.
my God!
She's had her
I've had my
hair.
hair pulled.
Yeah.
He's had his toes pulled.
So did they ever tell you why? Nobody told me why it was the most haunted, other than obviously.
I
the
don't
most
know why
ghostly.
it's.
It has history background on it.
I'll have to do a little research. This is my favorite house in the whole city. This one actually was purchased by the Kenwood Inn, and they're renovating it. So
Yeah,
hopefully-
Yeah, she owns that now.
You guys, did we see her on the trip that we took? Did she come walking out? Like,
Yes.
Okay, I remember.
Yes.
You guys.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have talked to her then.
Yes.
Hopefully she's still working.
Wonderful lady.
From the last time we came down, we stayed at the Kenwood, and it was during the Christmas time, and one of the guys that was sitting there said she's restoring that,
Yes.
but she sold the Kenwood.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And
I
you can
remember.
tell she sold the Kenwood.
Yeah.
But luckily she's still working on it. Recently they just did a whole bunch of work. They cleaned it all out, like all the stuff that was in there. They took all that out.
I'm hoping she's turning it into a B&B, because
Me
I will
too.
definitely
Me
stay
too.
at it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
Because she is so nice.
You'll have to tell her that I am dying to get in there. I love that house so much. Yeah, I wish now that I talked to her when we ran into her on our last trip,
Well,
and I haven't seen her since. Or at least I don't know for sure, because I'm not sure I'd actually recognize her right off the bat.
I love these old streets.
Yeah, so this is all, this is Marine Street. It's all old, authentic houses. They're all privately owned except for the few bed and breakfasts back there. This house here, this one's pretty cool. This one was built in 1925. It's my second favorite house. Ordered out of the Sears and Roebuck
Yeah.
catalog. Now, when you guys were here, I don't think this house was up here yet.
No.
So this has only been up here for about 3 months. It had so much water damage because it was an all wooden house, they had to renovate it. But yeah, they've raised it because it floods in here so bad.
yep.
Maybe next time we come down, we're going to have to find Magnolia Avenue, where all those magnolia trees are.
Oh yeah.
I heard it was really pretty and quiet walking down there.
Now this house is for sale at just under $1 million.
Just under $1 million.
Just
There you go, kids.
There you go, under $1
you
million.
could get 2.
Now you're accompanying the horse's stomps.
I put a lot of kids to sleep with that. A lot of kids fall asleep on the carriage because I think it's pretty, like just soothing. Now, everything in front of us used to be the Franciscan monastery. Then the British showed up and chased the monks away, so now we have the St. Francis Barracks and
Honestly,
you look all the way to the end, that white wall on the right-hand side is the National Cemetery, which is supposed to be very haunted. I go by there twice a day, though, and I haven't seen anything yet. Although I did have somebody on my ride, Gardner from there, and he showed me a video that he'd taken. I don't know if I told you this or not. I don't know if you rode after you guys did, but it showed the spotlight shining up on the flag, and then you could see all the tombstones out behind. Well, you see a patch of fog come from the side of the tombstones, and it just kind of drifts over the tombstones. It gets over the light and stops, and then dives into the light and disappears.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, wow.
Yeah.
And I would be skeptical, like, why were you videotaping in the cemetery in the middle of the night? But he worked there, and he was trying to catch something, so he actually did. Pretty convincing.
The Casablanca we're staying in right now, that place is active too.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, last night he woke me up out of my sleep. I said, baby, are you messing with stuff on the table? No.
it literally sounded like somebody was throwing stuff in the room.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They must know that you guys kind of welcome them. So
Well, I'm a paranormal investigator too.
oh my God. Well, no kidding. So they know that.
We make it a point. We stay at bed and breakfasts every time we come here.
So what is the most fascinating thing that's happened to you since you've been investigating?
Physically or
Just like what really like hit you, like really stays with you. No, I don't mean
Is
physically.
that the night you got thrown up against the truck?
no? This is when I basically just started getting into it. I was laying in bed one night, just watching TV, wide awake, and something slapped me across my
Oh
mouth.
my God,
And
that wasn't very nice.
I looked around and said, "Well, that's not normal."
The thing that sticks out with me is we have a graveyard that we like to go to.
It's an old
Civil.
Civil War cemetery.
So we're out there one night. And he goes, baby, we need to go. We need to go now. Okay. He walks around the side of the truck, and all of a sudden I hear wham. It's like, what the hell? He opens
Well,
the
the
door
crazy
and says,
thing about
let's
it,
go.
the story in the cemetery itself, there was a serial killer. We're from South Carolina, and the guy took all the bodies and buried them up there and just left them.
Yeah, we're from Darlington, the race capital.
I love South Carolina. You guys have Black Mountain, right?
We do.
Okay. When we honeymooned all through South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and all that, but we stayed a night in Black Mountain.
Oh, we love Tennessee.
Oh yeah, Tennessee's beautiful.
Pigeon Forge. We go up there a lot.
So I go by the National Cemetery twice a day, every day, and I haven't seen anything, but I do talk to them every time I go by. And sometimes I wonder if they're kind of watching out for us, because we've had some crazy things happen that, could have been a disaster, but we were fine. So I don't know if it's them or we're just lucky.
You enjoying looking at everything?
You're being good, boy.
Yeah, you're just
You're
looking
enjoying
around.
yourself.
You are a cutie.
Yaya and Poppy got him spoiled.
Well, that's what grandpas are for.
He's the youngest with 16
Oh
grandkids.
my goodness.
That's on
Oh.
his side.
Wow.
Yeah.
My 4 children said they don't want any kids. So I have 16 grandkids along with him.
Aw.
Because when I married him, when I got with him, I
course.
said I'd take your kids
You
too.
inherited the kids.
Yep. And all the grandbabies.
Aw.
I didn't realize you had 16.
16,
Well,
oh my
15 at the time.
How many kids do you have?
6.
Okay.
So we all have to take turns. Christmas is fun.
Oh, I bet. Is there times when you all get together?
We do.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That must be awesome though.
It
When I was
is.
younger, we had a pretty big family and everybody always got together, but of course everyone's gone now for the most part. You said you have eaten the OC whites?
No,
No,
we
that's
want
that's
to.
on our
Oh,
list.
that's on your bucket list. Yeah.
There we go. Dun, dun, dun.
Never seemed so good.
Hey, JJ.
Now, this building here, this long yellow building, used to be Potter's Wax Museum. I don't remember if I told you guys this, but have you ever seen the movie The House of Wax with Vincent
Yes.
Price? It was
Yes.
filmed here.
That I didn't know.
Yeah. Now it's called the White Room. It's a wedding venue.
Oh, so it's a wedding venue. I thought we could go eat there.
Well, A1A Ale Works is at the front, so you can.
So the rest of it's wedding venue.
Yeah, so basically from
It is.
these doors forward is all the restaurant, or actually these doors forward, and everything behind it is all the wedding venue. We're gonna get through the light. Hurry up, come on. Hurry! Oh, pick it up. He's like, don't rush me.
They can wait. I am a horse.
Now, this I just learned a couple of months ago. These lions, now the bridge is called the Bridge of Lions because of the lion. They were carved in Florence, Italy,
Yep.
out of the same marble slab as the statue David by Michelangelo.
That's
And-
something I just learned.
Yeah. I forget who told me that. But... Oh, come on, Rose. Come on. Get him. Sorry, guys. There is no hurry in
Don't
here.
worry, it's okay.
Thank
You're welcome. She's like, I'm taking my time.
Yeah,
She's like,
they'll wait. So what are you guys doing after this?
Well, this is our last night here, then we're going back home. Yeah.
Well, I hope to see you next time.
We'll be back down, I believe, in June.
June?
Yep.
We're usually here probably 6 or 7 times a year.
We really need to make it up to South Carolina, North Carolina, and spend some time.
Shoot, every time we come, since the pandemic started, every time we come down, it's like everybody's hiring everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's if you notice.
And paying very well.
When you first started coming, you probably noticed most everything would be open a little later.
Yeah.
Now everything's closing at like 5
Because they
o'clock.
can't find the help they need.
Exactly.
They even had to change the menus.
Yep. Yeah, they had to shorten some of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're having a really hard time keeping staff. Even we are. We're having
That's
the
like
worst
Burger
time.
Bucket quit their ice cream.
Oh no!
So we were eating in the Columbia restaurant, and a young girl, she's probably
Almost time.
about 20 years old. She come in there and they're hiring. They're going to pay $25, $30 an hour. And she told them it wasn't enough. She said it wasn't enough.
40 hours a week guaranteed.
Oh my
Plus
god!
And a $1,000 sign-up bonus.
Wow!
I was
she
like,
turned
baby,
it
can I
down.
take that?
She turned and she said, "I'll go home and let my parents take care of me."
I said, baby, I'll take that.
Yeah, no kidding. Me too. Well, I wouldn't quit this job ever. But yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It's sad.
Yeah, we go walk right across the street to go to our hotel.
Oh, are you staying at the Hilton? Oh no,
No,
the Casablanca.
Casablanca.
That's right. Well, I'm really glad you guys ended up with me again.
Well, I hope we see you again. Because we'll probably have newcomers again.
All right, baby, I'm gonna need you or somebody to take him while I take him.
Wait, I get off, baby. You gotta wait, I get off.